The skis of Eldoria cracked open with streaks of blue and violet as Nyxara's vessel plummeted through the atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across the crystalline control panel, their urgent pulse matching the thunder of her heartbeats. Her purple hands danced over the translucent controls, her four-fingered grip struggling to stabilize the failing systems. Navigation compromised, hummed the ship's consciousness. Stabilizers failing. Nyxara's luminescent eyes, deep violet with swirling specks of silver, narrowed in concentration. "Reroute auxiliary power to landing systems," she commanded, her melodic voice tense but controlled. The vessel shuddered violently as it pierced through cloud layers, revealing an unfamiliar landscape of towering forests and winding rivers. Nyxara had never intended to visit this primitive world, but the sabotage to her ship had left her with few options. As the royal heir and scion of the celestial houses of Astralis, she'd fled her homeworld rather than submit to the arranged marriage with Lord Valkyrian, the cruel ruler of the neighboring system. Now she was paying the price for her defiance. The small craft skimmed treetops before crashing through the forest canopy. Metal shrieked against wood, and the protective shield flickered before giving out entirely. Nyxara braced herself as the vessel careened into the ground, carving a deep furrow through soil and stone before coming to rest in a small clearing. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of damaged systems and the soft patter of rain beginning to fall outside. Nyxara unstrapped herself from the pilot's seat, wincing at the pain in her side. A quick assessment revealed a deep gash across her ribs, the wound seeping indigo blood. She pressed her hand against it, summoning a faint glow of healing energy, one of the many gifts of her celestial heritage. It would stabilize the injury, but complete healing would require time and rest. Neither of which she might have if Valkyrian's bounty hunters had followed her trail. The ship's door groaned as she forced it open, letting in the scent of wet earth and unfamiliar vegetation. Nyxara stepped cautiously onto the soil of this world, her first time setting foot on a planet so distant from the glittering nebulae of her home system. The gravity felt heavier, the air thicker, but breathable. Rain fell gently on her face, droplets running down her lavender skin and catching in her silvery white hair. She looked up at the sky, hoping to orient herself by the stars, but thick clouds obscured her view. Lost, injured on an unknown world, not how she had planned her escape. A sound from the forest edge made her tense. Nyxara reached for the energy blade at her hip, fingers curling around its hilt as she prepared to defend herself. The foliage parted, and a figure stepped forward. A native of this world, tall, with skin in shades of beige and brown rather than the vibrant colors of her people. 2 arms, 2 legs, facial features not unlike her own, but without the luminescence that marked her kind. His eyes widened at the sight of her, and he froze in place. "I mean no harm," Nyxara said, though she knew her language would be incomprehensible to him. She raised her free hand in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The stranger didn't flee. Instead, he slowly set down the rectangular object he'd been holding, some kind of primitive data collection device, she guessed, and approached with careful steps. He pointed to himself. "Jasper," he said. Names, that was a start. She mirrored his gesture. "Nyxara." He repeated it, stumbling slightly over the unfamiliar syllables, then pointed to her wound. Concern etched across his features. Even across species, some expressions seemed universal. "I'll be fine," she said, though she knew he wouldn't understand. Jasper retrieved a bag from where he'd emerged from the forest. From it, he pulled a cloth and a container of water. He mimicked cleaning a wound, then gestured to her injury, his eyebrows raised in question. Nyxara hesitated. Trusting a stranger on an unknown world was risky, but her options were limited. She nodded once. Jasper approached slowly, as one might a wounded animal. His touch was gentle as he cleaned the blood from her side, his face a mixture of fascination and concern. Nyxara watched him work, studying this strange being who offered help rather than fear or hostility. When he finished, he wrapped a bandage around her ribs, his fingers careful not to linger on her skin. Nyxara noticed the faint blush that colored his cheeks whenever their eyes met. Interesting. Perhaps emotional responses weren't so different across their species after all. "Thank you," she said, placing her hand over her heart, a gesture of gratitude among her people. Jasper smiled, seemingly understanding the sentiment if not the words. He gathered his supplies, then pointed to her crashed vessel, tilting his head in question. Nyxara shook her head. "Not safe," she said, knowing he wouldn't comprehend the words, but hoping he'd understand her meaning. The ship needed repairs before it would fly again, and staying near the crash site would make her easy to track. Jasper seemed to grasp her concern. He pointed to himself, then in the direction from which he'd come, then to her. An invitation. Nyxara glanced back at her damaged vessel. The rain was falling harder now, and night would soon follow. She needed shelter, time to heal, and perhaps this native could provide both. She reached back into the ship and retrieved a small pack of essential supplies and her communication device. She'd have to return for the more critical components later, when she'd regained her strength. She nodded to Jasper, "Lead the way." He seemed to understand. As he guided her through the forest, Nyxara caught him glancing back at her repeatedly, his expression a mixture of wonder and disbelief. She couldn't blame him. She doubted his world had much contact with beings from beyond their atmosphere. The forest thickened around them, ancient trees towering overhead. Jasper moved with confidence through the wilderness, occasionally stopping to make notations in a small book he carried. A researcher of some kind, perhaps, or an explorer. Nyxara followed, alert for any sign of pursuit, but also taking in the strange beauty of this world. So different from the crystalline cities and nebula gardens of Astralis, yet there was something compelling about its wild, untamed nature. As they walked, Jasper attempted simple communication through gestures and drawings in the soft earth. Nyxara learned that they were headed to a small outpost where he had been based for several months, studying the forest. She gathered that few others would be there, a relief, as she wasn't ready to face a crowd of curious natives. The rain eased as they reached a small clearing where a modest structure stood. Built of local wood and stone, it was primitive by her standards but offered shelter. Jasper led her inside, lighting several lamps that cast a warm glow throughout the single room. Nyxara took in her surroundings, maps spread across tables, specimens of local flora carefully preserved, and simple furnishings. Jasper's home, or at least his temporary one. He gestured to a chair, inviting her to sit, then busied himself preparing some kind of hot beverage. Nyxara sank into the offered seat, feeling the full weight of exhaustion now that immediate danger had passed. She watched as this strange man moved about his dwelling, seemingly unfazed by the fact that he was hosting a purple-skinned being from another world. Jasper handed her a steaming mug, demonstrating how to drink from it. The liquid was bitter but warming, spreading comfort through her tired body. For the first time since her desperate flight from Astralis, Nyxara allowed herself to relax slightly. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, repairing her ship, evading potential pursuers, and finding a way to communicate with this human who had shown her kindness. But for now, in this simple shelter as rain pattered on the roof, she had found a moment of peace. Jasper sat across from her, those curious eyes still studying her with wonder rather than fear. He raised his mug in a small gesture, and Nyxara mirrored it, a silent acknowledgement between two beings from worlds apart. The stars had led her here to this place, this moment. Where they would lead next, not even the celestial seers of her world could predict. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Morning light filtered through the simple wooden shutters of Jasper's cabin, casting golden patterns across the floor. Nyxara opened her eyes, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous day rushed back, her crash landing, the injury, and the human who had offered her shelter. She sat up carefully on the makeshift bed Jasper had prepared for her, testing the wound at her side. The healing energy she had channeled overnight had done its work. The gash was now little more than a tender line across her ribs. One benefit of her celestial heritage was rapid recovery, provided she had time to rest. Jasper was already awake, quietly working at his desk. When he noticed her stirring, he turned with a smile that seemed both tentative and genuine. "Good morning," he said, though Nyxara understood only the friendly tone, not the words themselves. She responded with a nod and placed her hand over her heart, the gesture of gratitude she had shown him yesterday. His smile widened in response. Jasper approached with a bowl of what appeared to be food, fruits of various colors, some kind of grain, and a steaming beverage similar to what she'd had the night before. He set it beside her and mimed eating, then returned to his desk to give her space. Nyxara examined the offering cautiously. Her people could consume a wide variety of substances, but not all would be compatible with her biology. She selected a red fruit, taking a small bite. Sweet, tangy, and thankfully causing no immediate adverse reaction. She continued eating, watching Jasper as he worked. He was sketching something, occasionally glancing in her direction. Curious, Nyxara rose and moved closer, peering over his shoulder. It was a drawing of her, remarkably accurate, capturing the luminescent quality of her eyes and the intricate patterns that naturally adorned her purple skin. Jasper tensed slightly when he realized she was watching, then relaxed and turned the paper toward her, eyebrows raised in a silent question. Did she approve? Nyxara nodded, genuinely impressed. She gestured toward the pencil he held, then to the paper. Understanding, he handed them to her. With deft strokes, she began to sketch, not the cabin or Jasper, but a star map of her home system. The twin suns of Astralis, the 7 moons, and the nebula clouds that wove between them. As she drew, she felt a pang of homesickness for the shimmering towers and floating gardens of her world. Jasper watched with fascination. When she finished, she pointed to the central planet on her map and then to herself. Astralis, she said, my home. Astralis, Jasper repeated slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. He tapped the map, then pointed upward. The stars. He understood she was not of this world. He pulled out one of his own maps, a detailed rendering of the forest surrounding them. He pointed to a spot marked with an X Earth, he said, then added, we are here. Earth, Nyxara echoed, their first real exchange of information, a foundation. Jasper seemed excited by this breakthrough. He gathered more paper and began drawing simple objects, naming each one. Tree, water, sun. Nyxara repeated the words, her mind quickly adapting to the patterns of his language. In turn, she offered the words in her tongue, though the melodic tones seemed difficult for his vocal anatomy to reproduce. Hours passed in this improvised language lesson. By midday, they had established a rudimentary vocabulary, enough for basic communication. Nyxara learned that Jasper was indeed a cartographer, mapping previously uncharted regions of this forest for his people. He had been alone at this outpost for 3 months, which explained his relative calm upon encountering an alien being. Perhaps isolation had prepared him for the unusual. Ship, Nyxara said carefully in his language, pointing in the direction of her crashed vessel. I need fix. Jasper nodded, seeming to understand. He picked up his pack and gestured for them to go. She gathered her few belongings, including the small communication device that might help her detect any approaching threats. The walk back to the crash site took nearly an hour. Jasper led confidently through the dense forest, occasionally stopping to add details to his map or collect plant specimens. Nyxara observed how attuned he was to his environment, noting signs she might have missed: disturbed soil, broken twigs, animal tracks. When they reached the clearing where her vessel lay, Nyxara approached cautiously, scanning for any indication that others had discovered it in her absence. The ship appeared undisturbed, half buried in soil, its crystalline hull reflecting the sunlight in prismatic patterns. Jasper stood back, giving her space but watching with undisguised curiosity as she pressed her palm against the vessel's entry panel. The door slid open with a soft hum, revealing the compact interior. Wait here, she told him, using both words and gestures. Inside the ship, Nyxara quickly assessed the damage. The navigation system was completely offline and the dimensional drive had sustained critical damage. Most concerning was the quantum beacon, a device that would, if activated, broadcast her location across vast distances. It had been damaged in the crash but not destroyed. If repaired, it could be her salvation, or her doom if Valkyrian's forces detected the signal first. She gathered tools and components, stuffing them into a carrying case. As she worked, her communication device emitted a soft alert. Nyxara froze, quickly activating the screen. A ship had entered Earth's atmosphere, not large but definitely not of human origin. The trajectory suggested a controlled landing approximately 300 miles to the north. Bounty hunters, almost certainly. They must have followed her quantum trail through the void between stars. Nyxara hurried outside, finding Jasper examining the furrow the crash had carved into the earth. Danger, she said urgently, pointing to the sky. She activated her communication device, showing him the trajectory of the incoming vessel. Bad people looking for me. Jasper's expression darkened with concern. He glanced between her and the projected path of the approaching ship, clearly weighing options. Why? He asked, making a gesture that clearly questioned their motives. Nyxara hesitated. How to explain interstellar politics and arranged marriages with their limited shared vocabulary? She touched the ornate markings on her forehead, the royal insignia of her house, then made a gesture of placing a crown on her head. "Princess," Jasper said, recognition flickering in his eyes. She nodded. "Running away," she added, mimicking the action of fleeing. Understanding dawned on Jasper's face, followed by determination. He pointed to the north, where the bounty hunters would land, then made a slashing motion with his hand and pointed south. "Not go there, go different way," he said firmly. Nyxara nodded gratefully. She gathered what she could from her ship, including emergency supplies and a small energy weapon she concealed within her garments. Before leaving, she activated the vessel's camouflage system. It wouldn't hide the crash site completely, but it might slow down her pursuers. As they began their journey south, away from the projected landing site, Nyxara found herself studying Jasper with new appreciation. He had accepted her presence, offered help, and now was actively assisting her in evading those who hunted her, all without fully understanding who or what she was. Such trust was rare even among her own kind. They traveled through the day, moving deeper into the forest. Jasper led them along game trails and shallow streams, explaining through gestures and simple words that this would make them harder to track. By late afternoon, they reached a small waterfall cascading into a clear pool. "Rest here," Jasper said, setting down his pack. Nyxara sank gratefully onto a moss-covered stone. The pace had been challenging, especially with her recent injury, though it had nearly healed completely now. Jasper busied himself setting up a small camp, erecting a simple shelter of branches and leaves that would be invisible from more than a few yards away. His expertise in wilderness survival impressed Nyxara, whose life among the technological wonders of Astralis had never required such skills. As twilight approached, Jasper produced a small stringed instrument from his pack. Nyxara watched curiously as he began to play, fingers dancing across the strings to create a melody both melancholy and beautiful. The music touched something deep within her. On Astralis, music was mathematical perfection, engineered to stimulate specific emotional responses. This was different, raw, imperfect, yet somehow more authentic. When Jasper finished playing, he offered the instrument to her with a questioning look. Nyxara took it carefully, her four-fingered hands adapting to the unfamiliar shape. She began to play a traditional melody from her world, a song of the celestial dance, mimicking the movement of Astralis' 7 moons. Jasper listened, enraptured. When she finished, their eyes met and held. In that moment, something shifted between them, a bridge formed not of words but of shared beauty. "Your world," Jasper said softly, pointing to the stars now appearing overhead, "must be beautiful." "Yes," Nyxara replied, surprising herself with a pang of homesickness. "But dangerous now." 7 days had passed since Nyxara crash-landed on Earth. 7 days of learning Jasper's language, studying his maps, and moving steadily southward through the vast forest. 7 days of growing closer to this human who had risked everything to help her. They had established a routine. Each morning, Nyxara would check her communication device for signs of pursuit while Jasper prepared a simple breakfast. They would travel until midday, rest briefly, then continue until evening. At night, they would take turns keeping watch, though the bounty hunters had yet to discover their trail. Today they had reached what Jasper called the Ancient Grove, a section of forest where the trees were impossibly tall and wide, their trunks spiraling upward in patterns that reminded Nyxara of the quantum architecture on Astralis. The canopy was so dense that little sunlight penetrated to the forest floor, creating a perpetual twilight illuminated by bioluminescent fungi and flowers that glowed in shades of blue and green. "Beautiful," Nyxara said, her command of Jasper's language improving daily. She touched one of the glowing plants, watching as it pulsed gently in response. "Like you," Jasper replied, then looked away quickly, a flush coloring his cheeks. Nyxara felt her own skin warm, the bioluminescent patterns along her arms glowing more brightly in response to her emotions. Among her people, such a visible reaction would be considered an unseemly display. But here, with Jasper, she found herself caring less about royal protocol and restraint. They made camp in the hollow of an enormous fallen tree, its interior dry and protected from the elements. Jasper built a small, smokeless fire using techniques he had perfected during his months in the wilderness. The flames cast dancing shadows across the wooden walls of their temporary shelter. As they shared a meal of foraged berries and roots, Jasper had carefully introduced Nyxara to earth foods that wouldn't harm her system. A comfortable silence settled between them. Nyxara found herself studying his profile, the way the firelight caught in his dark hair and illuminated the angles of his face. So different from the ethereal beauty of her people, yet compelling in its own way. Jasper, she said finally, breaking the silence, I think it's time I tell you why I'm here, why those men hunt me. He turned to her, giving her his full attention. His patience was something she had come to treasure. He never pushed for information, allowing her to share at her own pace. Nyxara took a deep breath. On my world, I am important. She touched the royal markings on her forehead. My family rules Astralis, has ruled for many generations. A princess, Jasper said, using the word he had learned days ago. Yes, but not just any princess. I am heir to the celestial throne. She paused, searching for the right words in his language. My father, the sovereign, arranged a marriage, political alliance with neighboring system, very powerful, very cruel ruler named Valkyrian. Jasper's expression darkened. Forced marriage. Nyxara nodded. Valkyrian conquers worlds, destroys cultures. My father thinks alliance will protect our people. I think, she shook her head, I think it will destroy us slower. So you ran, Jasper said simply. Yes, took small ship, escaped during celebration ceremony, but Valkyrians sent hunters, very good trackers. They followed me across stars. She gestured to her communication device. They're still searching, won't stop until they find me. Jasper was quiet for a moment, absorbing her story. Then he reached out slowly, hesitantly, and covered her four-fingered hand with his five-fingered one. The touch sent a small electrical current through her skin, a normal reaction for her species when experiencing emotional connection. You're safe here, he said with quiet conviction. I won't let them take you. Nyxara felt something inside her chest tighten. On Astralis, she had been surrounded by guards, advisors, and servants, yet had never felt truly protected. Here, with this single human's simple promise, she felt safer than she had in years. Your turn, she said softly. Tell me your story. Jasper smiled ruefully. Not as dramatic as yours. No royal blood, no arranged marriages. Still want to hear? He poked at the fire with a stick, gathering his thoughts. I was always different. While others in my village wanted to build, to farm, to stay in one place, I wanted to explore, to see what was beyond the next hill, the next river. He gestured to his maps. They thought I was strange, wasting my life drawing pictures of places no one cared about. So you left. Eventually, got work with the Geographic Society. They pay me to map unexplored regions. This forest has been my project for almost a year now, he smiled. Before you crashed into it. Sorry about that, Nyxara said with a small laugh. Don't be, best thing that's ever happened to me. His voice was sincere, his eyes meeting hers without hesitation. Nyxara felt that electrical current again, stronger this time, her skin glowing in response. For a moment neither spoke, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings.